Hello, welcome to Monster Mash, a show for monsters by monsters. My name is Lindsay, and we are going to be talking about Madeleine McCann and her strange disappearance in 2007. So the way that this story goes, it's a really dark story. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. It's about the disappearance of a 3-year-old girl. If that's not your thing to listen to, if it's gonna really upset you, you might not want to listen. But pretty much, a little girl went missing in Portugal on vacation. Once again in 2007, and she hasn't been seen since. A body was never found, and all in all, it's a very tricky situation. There's a lot of odd details about it, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. And, well, let's get started. So, first of all, I would like to say that tomorrow a documentary comes out called The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, and I do suggest watching it. It seems like it's going to be good, and it's going to cover a lot of the theories I'm going to be talking about today. So, it was May in 2007, and the parents are named Kate and Jerry McCann, and, she wasn't an only child. She was the eldest, but she had two twin 2-year-old siblings as well, named Emily and Sean. And they were from the UK, and the family, as well as the top of 7, as they're referred to, like some family friends, decided, let's go on a vacation to Portugal. And it wasn't a great area. Like, there's a lot of, like, sex trafficking, and yeah, so, like, that's kind of one of the theories that is going to be thrown around, but I'll talk about that later. So April 20th, they arrive at the Ocean Club Resort in Algarve, Portugal, specifically apartment 5A. And this resort is also still around today. And some important things to know about this resort is that it's open to the public because it is on a beach. Yeah, so a lot of people, like, it's connected to a main road. So a lot of people from across the road that live in, like, apartments or, like, just tourists in general, because it's a popular area, can go to the beach by walking through the complex. The resort is kind of split into several buildings, but they're like apartment style. And there's also a restaurant, a daycare, and like a pool, tennis courts. It's very nice. So the floor plan of the apartment has 2 bedrooms separated by a bathroom, a living room, and a kitchen. It's kind of like a basic holiday apartment. And in the parents' bedroom, that is like the closest bedroom to the sliding glass door. And in the kids' room, there's a big window. And, like, these are pretty important things. And the kids' room is the last place that Maddie was seen. The twins were too young to, of course, remember anything. And they were fast asleep throughout this whole ordeal. So, let me give you a rundown of what is called, like, the top of 7. So there's Rachel Oldfield, there's Matthew Oldfield, Jane Tanner, Fiona Payne, David Payne, Russell O'Brien, and Diane Webster. These were friends and close confidants of the McCanns. And once again, they traveled to Portugal together for vacation. So, as I mentioned before, since the resort is not fully secured, it's kind of not the safest place because of the fact that there's, like, sex trafficking in the area, which is, like, not great, the fact that it's an open place. I don't know. Maybe the resort wasn't thinking that it would be as big of a deal to tourists or something, but it just seems kind of odd to me, I guess, but, you know. So, the McCanns had, like, a routine that was, like, an everyday thing. They'd have their breakfast, they'd have lunch by the pool, go to the tennis courts and take tennis lessons. Pretty normal things, but at night, Kate and Jerry McCann and the Tapas 7 would meet at the Tapas Bar, which was in the resort, And they would leave the kids in the room, even though there is a very cheap daycare service through the resort that they could have left the kids at, which is kind of one of the reasons that people kind of suspect the parents in this case. I'm gonna go out and like flat out say that one. The parents are like big suspects. And it's also like kind of, it's one of those like kind of solved, unsolved crimes. I feel like we talk about those a lot on this show. But, yeah, it's, I don't know. Like, I feel like we'll get to it, okay? So, yeah, it's not a great start. So, an important thing to know is that the resort is divided into separate buildings. So, imagine that you are in a boat in the ocean and you are looking at the resort. Imagine it as 3 rectangles. So, the left rectangle is where the apartments are. The middle one is where, like, the pool is, and the right one is where the tapas bar is. So it's like they're separate buildings, but they're all a part of the same thing. It's almost like a mini neighborhood, in a way, the way that it's set up. And so, just to give you perspective, that left rectangle where the apartments are is where they leave 3 kids, 1 3-year-old, 2 2-year-olds, unauthorized, like, just like, they aren't watching them at all. And they go around the pool, and it's about a 15-minute walk to the tapas bar, and they get a seat where they can see the apartment, kind of. They can see the roof of it. They can't see the patio. They can't see the sliding glass door. They can't see the window. And every single night they would go to this place, and they told the workers at the tapas bar their routine. They told them that pretty much, hey, we left our kids in the apartment. We need this one table so we can watch them. Which is not good. Like, that is such a bad thing to do in a foreign country, or anywhere in general, is to go somewhere and openly admit to a whole staff of people that you don't know, you don't trust these people, that your kids are left, like, not being watched, like, alone, asleep, in an apartment that you can barely see. And the workers are also kind of suspects here. It's a mess, but generally, like, you shouldn't do that. Like, I don't know, it's just dumb to me. And also, here's a huge thing, a part of this case. They left the sliding glass door unlocked purposely because they wanted it to be convenient for every single 30 minutes that they go back and check on them, so they didn't have to bring their keys. That's so stupid. Like, why would you ever do that? Like, it's so bad. So that night, Madeleine was wearing long-sleeved white and pink pajamas, and she has, like, a little, like, speck in her right eye that's, like, very identifiable. And at 8:30 p.m., they decided to go to the tapas bar. They met the tapas 7. They did what they usually did, and they had an agreement with the workers there once again. And the tapas bar is close, but once again, it's like a 15-minute walk, 55 meters away. They could really only see the roof of the apartment, and the other adults at the table also had kids in their own apartments, but they had, like, baby monitors so they could watch them, and they all kind of had this routine where they would switch duties of going and watching the kids. Like, they would, like, go and check and make sure that everything's okay, then they'd come back, and then, like, another 30 minutes later, another person would go. And this is, like, kind of a weird thing about this whole situation. So it's like the tapas 7 and the McCanns had a timeline already planned. Like, they sort of knew almost what they were going to be telling the police. Like, it was like, no one goes to a restaurant and remembers exactly what time it is. I guess you could argue, since they were looking at the clock, to go and see, like, every 30 minutes, but at the same time, like, a bunch of adults are drinking at a table together. They're having dinner, like, and they aren't suspecting that their child's gonna get kidnapped, right? So I think that it's a little suspicious, in my opinion. So, anyways, the position of going to check on Maddie and the twins was passed around. It started off with Jerry McCann, and that was at 9:05 p.m. So that was 35 minutes after they got to the tapas bar. Nothing was out of the ordinary, except upon recollection, Jerry remembers leaving the bedroom door shut, and when he came back, it was wide open. But, I can kind of see this being like a fluke, like he forgot that it was open or something. So I can see why he wouldn't think that that was suspicious, I guess. And then next, it was Jane Tanner, one of the top of 7, went to go check on her own kids. And she's one of the more important people because she actually had a huge lead, and it was a big thing. Like, the police investigated this lead for 6 years. Like, that's how big it is. And on her way back from checking on her own kid, she saw a man carrying a small child away from apartment 5A, which is the McCanns. The child was shoeless and had the same pajamas as Maddie. She didn't think much of it since it was a popular tourist spot. She described him as Mediterranean and in his 30s, and this was at 9:15 p.m. And at 9:30 p.m., Kate McCann wants to check on the kids. But Matthew Oldfield, another friend, offers to go do it since he's going to check in on his own kids anyways. Apparently the bedroom door was wide open. He can't remember if the window was shut all the way and didn't even remember seeing the children. So essentially what he did is that he walked in, opened the door, or walked through the already open door, and then looked briefly, maybe saw some figures being obscured by shadows, possibly, or thought that he saw Maddie there, and then he left, and then went back to the tapas bar, and was like, yeah, everything's fine. And it's 10 p.m., and this is the first time that Kate decides to go and check in on her own children. And I don't want to be too harsh on her because we've all had those nights where we're not very responsible, but at the same time, as a parent, that is, she should be more responsible since she is a parent of, 3 small children. They're young. I would understand more if they were, 7 years old. And even then, it's bad. So, she checks in on them, and she tries to go to open the bedroom door. And as she's opening it, the door slams. And, she's like, something's wrong. And so she opens the door, she kind of fights it open, and a window is open, wide open. There's a breeze coming in that slammed the door, and she checks on the twins first. Twins are there, they're fast asleep, they were not disturbed. And Maddie was gone, leaving behind her favorite toy, a cuddle cat, and her favorite blanket. So, what we can kind of think of from this crime scene that she has set up, is that supposedly somebody opened the window, took the kid out, and then left. Did not wake up the 2-year-olds, which is kind of surprising to me because I don't know, I feel like 2-year-olds can easily be awoken by things. I don't know. But, whatever, maybe they were, fast asleep. And so she runs back to the tapas bar, and the first thing she yells is, Maddie's gone, they've taken her, which is really odd. I guess, if you are a mother and, you think that you see your kid's not there, and you left the door unlocked, maybe your first thought is, oh yeah, she's been kidnapped, but I also feel like your first thought would be, where did she wander off to? Anyways, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. So 60 people searched for her until 4:30 a.m. that night, and people were just, like, yelling her name. They wanted to find this little girl. They were worried. They thought that she wandered off and maybe got taken by someone, or, like, the resort was very much trying to make it seem like she just wandered off. Kate was trying to make it seem like someone kidnapped her. And so let's get on to some of the theories. So, once again, the first one is that Madeleine wandered off by herself. The reason why this one is not as credible is because they did some testing, I believe, back then. And a 3-year-old couldn't have opened the window. It was way too heavy. Her DNA wasn't even on the window, like her fingerprints. The sliding glass door would be way too heavy for her to open as well. And it wouldn't make much sense because they were all in bed, and also, like, the door opening a lot is, like, kind of strange. The second one is she was kidnapped and sold into sex trafficking or to a family over the black market that can't have kids. I mentioned it earlier, but the area is really known for sex trafficking, so it's possible, except for a few key details about the actual scene of the crime. The third theory is that a family friend, Clement Freud, relative of Sigmund Freud, yep, that's a thing, kidnapped and killed Maddie. And that one is because, people, I think that maybe, like, a worker, I think it was, like, maybe, like, a gardener, someone that worked for his mansion, claimed that he hid the body under the driveway, under, like, the pavement there. And I don't know if they ever took dogs to it. If I'm gonna be honest, when I was researching this, I couldn't find much about this lead. I'm wondering if it's still being currently investigated. I'm sure that it's going to be touched upon in tomorrow's documentary on Netflix. Like, once again, I suggest you watch it. I'm sure it's going to be, like, really good. But the final theory is that the parents accidentally killed her and are trying to cover it up. And when I first heard this, I was kind of skeptical. Like, I kind of wanted to give the parents the benefit of the doubt. But there's a few things later on that were found out that just are weird and are kind of, like, really telling about, like, their character. So, the reason why the break-in is not possible, by the way, is because the window that was completely wide open and was, like, made a huge deal out of, they did fingerprint evidence and only found the fingerprints of Jerry and Kate on the window. And there were no one else's fingerprints or DNA inside of this apartment at all. Like, there was nothing else, and it just doesn't make sense. And, it's possible. I'll give them that. If maybe they were wearing gloves or something, but the fact that the twins didn't wake up, I don't know. And also, I'm about to get to some more stuff that really kind of puts the parents in that position of being the ones that did it. So, the Jane Tanner sighting of the man carrying the girl that looked like Maddie. Well, 6 years later, the cops finally looked into it, and they spent the whole 6 years trying to figure it out. They find the man, and it was, like, identified by Jane Tanner. That is the man that I saw. And it was just his child. He was just a tourist. It wasn't Maddie. He even brought the child. Like, it wasn't Maddie. So, essentially, they wasted 6 years of an investigation on nothing. At least it kind of opened up the timeline a little more, which is, like, a good thing. But I wish that it had been opened up sooner, honestly. So, yeah, there was, another sighting, actually, of a man carrying a child towards the beach, a different man, around 10 p.m., which is around the time that Kate went back. And they made sketches which ended up not being released till 2013 for some reason. This happened in 2007. Why would you wait 6 years? This is, like, one of the dumbest investigations I think I've ever, like, read about, but, the sketches looked eerily similar to Jerry, which is another thing that kind of, makes him seem a little guilty. And it also, like, it just has the most evidence. Earlier in the week, the McCanns admitted that Maddie had complained of not being able to sleep. And so the popular opinion here is that Jerry, because he's a doctor, gave Maddie sleeping medication. And he accidentally gave her too much, and she passed away from an overdose. I'm a little skeptical of this one as well. Just because of the fact that they brought in dogs. And this is, like, a really important part of this. They brought in 2 dogs. They brought in one that could sniff out blood, one that could sniff out dead bodies. They took it to the McCann's car, they took it to the resort, and they took it to the apartment itself. And the apartment had traces of blood in the kids' bedroom, the parents' bedroom, Kate's clothing, the back of the couch, and I believe in the car as well. And then a dead body was sensed behind the couch as well as in the car. So, more than likely she died behind that couch somehow, and that was in the living room. So that wouldn't make sense, the whole window thing, unless they broke in through the window, but there was no sign of a break-in. And also, funny story, when it comes to the crime scene itself, about 20 people had been in there before the cops could even get there, so there was a lot of tampering with it as well that could have went down, which is not good. And also, the way that Kate and Jerry talk about the dogs is so weird. Like, them and Clement Freud make fun of the dogs. Like, it's so weird to me. Like, they're like, oh yeah, what are the dogs gonna do in court? Are they gonna bark for yes or no? Like, this is their kid. Like, they should be worried. If there was blood and a dead body found in the apartment, they should be, like, thinking about what could have happened. And maybe, since it was a rental car, there was a body in it sometime before, somehow, you know? Kate also talks about Maddie in, like, a very disturbing way in her book. And, like, her business is something that I'm gonna have to talk about as well, because it's so weird. Kate mentions in her book that at night, sometimes she stays up thinking about how her 3-year-old daughter's pretty little genitals would look mutilated. What? Seriously? And this family has earned at least $15 million from this investigation because they opened up a business where they sell merchandise. And people would buy it to try to support the investigation, but nothing has really happened with the investigation. And I don't know, it's weird. I also kind of wonder if the friend that went in between the mom and Jerry was the guy that killed too. Just because the one that kind of, like, glanced in and didn't really see anything. Because that's just, like, weird and kind of vague. Like, I almost wonder if, like, he accidentally killed her somehow or intentionally did. And then went back to the top of 7 and was like, I don't know what to do. Also, hello, Miles. How are you doing? I've been talking about the Madeleine McCann case. But, yeah, the business thing is, like, really weird. And, like, just the way that they talk about her, like, objectifies her. And, oh my god, it's so weird. And if you've ever seen any of the interviews of Kate and Jerry, she always brings this, like, the cuddle cat thing that was found by where Maddie went missing. And, like, she just starts, like, fake crying on television. Like, whenever anyone asks her any questions, like, oh, did you do it? Like, she just starts crying and holding, like, the cuddle cat, and it's like, this was Maddie's favorite toy. And it's like, yeah, we know. I feel like it's kind of clear that the parents did it, and that's really depressing. Especially since blood was found on Kate's clothing. From the dogs. And especially how defensive they got over dogs. Like, blood-sniffing dogs. Like, why are you making fun of the dogs? Like, hello? Like, what are you gonna gain out of that? Just to give, like, a quick recap. So, all of them went to the tapas bar. They left the door unlocked into their apartment. It was 55 meters away. They claimed they were watching it and they go every 30 minutes. I personally think that they didn't go every 30 minutes. And she was missing. The 2-2-year-old babies were, like, still sleeping, which is really weird because when children are 2, they're really rowdy, and a lot of people, the whole sleeping medication theory comes from the fact that they were so knocked out. Like, the children were, like, even the 2-year-olds. And if there was some sort of struggle, like some man came in and took Maddie, there would have been some sort of screaming, something. She's 3. And the children would have woken up and started crying, or would stay awake, or, like, be freaked out. It doesn't make any sense at all. And so I'm gonna talk about the Clement Freud stuff for a bit. Just because Clement Freud is so weird. And he, of course, is family friends with the McCanns. Oh my god. He is Sigmund Freud's, like, relative, and he's a pervert. Like, this is a thing. And I can't believe that, because, like, the parents would go over to Clement Freud, like, his, like, mansion or whatever, and just be, like, trashing the police and, like, the investigation in Portugal, and being like, oh, they just want to blame us for everything. But that's not the mindset that a worried mother and father would have. It's not right. No matter what, something happened. Like, obviously. I personally think the craziest thing about this whole theory is that there's a possibility that she's still alive. It's very small because of the whole dead body thing. It's just if the dogs were wrong somehow, which I don't see how that would happen. She could be, like, around us. Like, she could be, like, a classmate of one of ours, you know? And that's, like, one of the craziest things about it. Because she's, like, 14, I think, if she were alive today. 14, 15? I think turning 15 this year. And it's so tragic because it just kind of shows what a family with money can do. Because honestly, I think it was the parents. Or I think it was one of the people that went and checked on the kids that weren't in the family, and they might have done something and then freaked out. People think that the sighting that looked like Jerry holding Maddie by the ocean was him disposing of the body. So I don't know. It's just kind of, it's a really crazy thing. I just keep trying to think of, like, what situation could have killed her that isn't the sleeping medication, because since there was blood found, or, like, sensed by the dogs, like, it doesn't really make sense that it was just an overdose, I don't think. Unless it caused some sort of bleeding, like, maybe she was coughing up blood or something. But there was no murder weapon found either, so I don't know. You guys are gonna have to tell me what you think, because it's kind of weird. Originally this was gonna be a longer episode, but my co-host is not here right now, so I'm probably gonna end it off. But yeah, watch the documentary tomorrow, because I think it's gonna be interesting, because it's going to be covering all of the theories in much more detail than what I went into. I know that I still went into some nitty-gritty details, but 100% everything in that documentary is going to be, like, correct or theory. And you know the slogan, don't fact check. Especially stuff with Clement Freud. I'm hoping that they go into that tomorrow, and it's not just something that the parents paid off to make it look like it's not them. So, thank you guys for joining. It's been fun. And I'll catch you guys next week, and we'll probably talk about the Zodiac Killer then. We keep pushing it off. We'll do it, I promise. We'll talk about Ted Cruz. So, see you guys. Bye.